Probably, I would say one of the greatest problems in the world today is the lack of love between mothers and fathers that gives rise to more and more dysfunctional children. You can see the dysfunction in relationships more and more. Again, look at the data. Twice as many people are dissatisfied in relationships, so they don't even get married. Divorce rates are always high. What we see is as the lack of success in relationships is ascending, what also has been ascending in America, where I have the statistics, is divorce. And what we see right now in America, shocking, is between 50 and 60% of all children grow up without a father in the home. Now, if you don't have a father in the home who's helping mom be happy, and a mother who loves dad, who depends on dad for certain meaningful things, if a child doesn't see that, a little girl has no idea of the potential she can get out of a man. She has no idea. And she certainly doesn't know how men are different. And she misinterprets things all the time. And a little boy doesn't know how to be a man if he doesn't have a father. So you'll see that most of the criminals in jail did not have fathers. All of the shooters in America, we see these terrible things, shooters, they all did not have fathers. Okay? Not that one can't survive without a father. There are cases. In my own case, well, I had a dad who stayed there with my mom. He traveled a lot. So what my mom did is she made sure that I had mentors.
Where lust for a whole life and nothing but less makes people jump out of a comfortable pond into an unknown ocean. Welcome to that journey between the East and the West. Who says Rolling Stones don't gather moss? Hello everyone, I am Meenu Gupta, your host for the day, and I'm delighted to have you join me every week as amazing people share their incredible and inspiring life stories of straddling continents. Thank you.
What do women want? What do men want? Do they want separate things in the East and the West? Let's find out from none other than John Gray. Now that name sounds familiar, doesn't it? John is the author of the most famous and well-known trusted relationship book of all times, Men Are From Mars and Women From Venus. USA Today listed his book as one of the top 10 most influential books of the last quarter century, which ruled the bestseller list for many years. John went on to write 20 more books and built a whole business empire around the theme of relationships between men and women. Did you know, however, that John was a celibate monk for 9 years before he became the most celebrated relationship expert and sex counselor? Now, how did that happen? Let's find out with John himself. A very warm welcome, John. Thank you for joining me today. Do share your early years and how yoga and meditation influenced you as an American born in the West.
Well, I think yoga and meditation were a huge influence in my life. You know, as little kids growing up at 3 years old, my dad was having his 7 children all doing yoga on a mat. So this was very unusual. My family's a bit unusual in that Houston, Texas, my dad is teaching us all yoga. And, you know, family has a Christian orientation. And my dad was just eccentric. And so was my mother. When the children were old enough to be in school, she opened up an esoteric bookstore, which had all the East and West esoteric, spiritual type books. So I grew up in that context of very more enlightened type folks in terms of higher consciousness and self-realization. Even when I was a baby, they drove from Houston, Texas, all the way to California to have me be blessed by Yogananda, who was also in America, wrote a famous book called Autobiography of a Yogi. So meditation's always been a part of my life. It was just kind of normal. I didn't know what it was until I was a teenager, although as a young boy, I dug a hole behind the garage and I would just sit in it and go into a state. So I was always a meditator since I was a young child. And then in the teenage years, we all would get high and go to music festivals like Woodstock. And driving home from one of these festivals, I was just crashed because I went so high taking psychoactive drugs. And the whole idea is you can get high, but you crash. But the Beatles at the time were very popular. And they said, you know, with meditation, you can get high and not crash. So I studied meditation after that and became the personal assistant to an Indian guru, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who started the Transcendental Meditation movement all around the world. One of the famous yogis who sort of introduced the West to a large portion of people to meditate, and even was at the beginning, did some of the early research and sponsored the early research on how meditation was good for lowering stress, for brain coherence, for creativity, for happiness. And I was one of the students for all of that. They did research on me at that time. This is back in the 70s. And they even had my brain frequencies on a poster in the TM movement centers, over 3,600 centers. So I was a bit of a celebrity in that group. And then when I was 28, I got my own enlightenment at that time and felt my own motivation. What am I to do in the world? I didn't know what I was going to do, but it turned out that I would end up learning about relationships and teaching about men and women and how we're different.
That was interesting. And you said that you were blessed by Swami Yogananda. Now, that must have been in the first couple of years of your life, I gather.
Yes, he didn't actually directly bless me. We arrived there. I was just a little child, I don't know, maybe 2 years old or something. And he had just passed away. He'd just taken his Mahasamadhi. So we were there at the ashram and they blessed me in his name. But he had just taken his Mahasamadhi.
That's a big blessing. There is no person like him. He's somebody with no other till now. So you are immensely blessed, I must say. And you mentioned something interesting, that you were meditating and your brain movements were put in the TN movement. Why was that so?
Well, this is back in the 70s. Transcendental meditation was huge all around the world, and Maharishi wanted to do research on brain function. So they started doing research on brain coherence. And I was one of their major students, high performing students, you might say. I was personal assistant. I was a spokesman. I had a lot of spiritual experiences, so I was very close to him. And so they would measure my brain and other people's brains as well. And then they wanted to show people who meditated could also have brain coherence. And they actually had a picture of me and they showed my brain off to the side, showing how it became more coherent during meditation. That was the early research. There's more research has been done since then, but it was the first research.
That's interesting. And I believe then you were with him for, I think, approximately 9 years.
Yes, I was with him as a celibate monk for 9 years. And then, ironically, after that, I came out into the world and got a PhD in sexual counseling. When you haven't had sex in 9 years, nor self-gratification in that way, sex becomes very important if it's important to you. So I then traveled around with lots of girlfriends, asking them to teach me about their bodies, because I've been celibate all those years, although I was very sexually active as a teenager, but I wasn't educated. So I thought I would take advantage of my status, a celibate monk, saying, now I'm learning about women's bodies because I'm no longer going to be a celibate monk. And so they were very happy to teach me. And after having, like 6 girlfriends and some other women along the way, I realized that women were really very different from men. Clearly, in terms of what women's needs are and what makes them happy in the bedroom, was very different from a man's. And that became the beginning of my teaching Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, which is how we're different. Now, one is, I called it enlightened sexuality. I still teach enlightened sexuality, which is different from the normal type of sex people have. But if you want to continue to have the passion so that you want to have sex, you have to learn relationship skills outside the bedroom, which, just like men and women are different in the bedroom, they're very different outside the bedroom. And so that became my lifelong study of how men and women are different.
That's interesting, because I was going to ask you, how did you gain the insights you did, which you just explained, the whole range of your phase after the 9 years to try and understand. So do you think that the parameters that you mentioned about men and women in your books hold good even if they come from different parts of the world?
Well, culture plays a big part into how we interact as men and women, without a doubt. There's certain ingredients in Men Are From Mars, which are the challenges that I talk about, that men not understand women, women don't understand men. And particularly the 10 challenges I focused on are very, very universal around the world. And how I didn't know that at the time when I was writing. I was just doing this from my own experience. One was simply, I'd grown up with 5 brothers, 6 boys and a family and a sister. Clearly, I understood boys and girls were different, but I understood myself as a male. Then being a monk with no relationships with girls or women, I understood masculinity. But when I came out in the world and started having sex with women and having relationships, clearly they thought differently, they reacted differently, they responded differently, they couldn't understand them. So I thought, wow, this is really important. I want to be able to understand this in a positive way. And there were some moments along the way that really tilted me in the direction of where I went. Because before I married my wife, Bonnie, we were married for 34 years until she passed. Before that, I was married for 2 years to another woman. And after that marriage ended, I reflected back why there were so many problems. The problems were because I didn't understand my role as a man and her role as a woman. Now, I'm not into telling people what their roles are, but what I'm into is explaining that male biology must interact in certain ways if you're going to produce male hormones. And female biology must interact in their relationships in certain ways that will support their female hormones. And in my first marriage, I was supporting my female hormones, and she was basically supporting my female hormones, and I was supporting her male hormones. So there was what was called a role reversal. Now, what's interesting is that role reversal was not the case with Bonnie, who I married for 34 years. And ironically, even before I married my first wife, I tried to marry Bonnie. But at the time, I'd been a yogi, a monk for 9 years. I didn't have a job. She was one of the women that I was with. And she said, I don't think you're ready for a relationship. And she was right. So then I married another woman. And I was way what I would call on my female side. And she was more on her male side. She had a home, she had money, she was my assistant, she helped promote me, she helped market me. And so all I had to do was be this teacher of ideas, which is certainly masculine, but she couldn't depend on me for financial support. I think it's very important to make female hormones, for a woman to make an abundance of female hormones. Ideally, she can have a man to provide extra financial support for her. If she's feeling financial support for him, she will tend to activate nurturing genes and begin to love him, but treat him like a child and bring out the child in him rather than the adult. These are all part of these unique hormones that we have inside. Now, today, the challenges are very different in that women often make more money than men, or as much money as men. And that's a new problem, because when you're making money, you're not making a lot of female hormones, generally speaking. You're making male hormones. And as a man, to feel well-being, male hormones, you need to make about 10 times more than women make, and about 20 times more testosterone you need to produce if you want to have romantic feelings towards your wife. And people today want to maintain those romantic feelings, and I teach them how. But it's very important that they have communication skills where a woman can boost a man's testosterone, and meanwhile, he can boost her estrogen and progesterone levels. These are very important these are the major female hormones for women, for them to experience lasting attraction for a man, lasting love for a man, lasting appreciation and trust in a man. He has to behave in a certain way that will stimulate those female hormones.
And that is, okay, essentially we are saying male and female. So we are putting them in different boxes.
Different biology, that's all, just different biology. Male biology.
Exactly.
Here's a basic idea here. Now that we know the science of biology, for a man to experience well-being, he has to interact, he has to have a mindset and ways of behaving and interacting with the world and in his relationships that stimulate primarily the production of testosterone. He needs to make 10 times more testosterone. Otherwise, he will experience chronic stress. Now, for a woman, she, at different times of the month, has to have a different relationship between her estrogen levels and her progesterone levels. And she needs to be making, at half the month, she needs to be making 10 times more estrogen than a man. Now, to make that estrogen, making money doesn't make estrogen. What estrogen is made when you're in a relationship with others or with one, whatever, where you feel I'm supported. I don't have to do everything myself. You'll see that as a marriage counselor for over 50 years, every woman who comes in who's unhappy, one of the things they'll say is, I feel overwhelmed. I'm doing and doing, giving and not getting back. It's that tendency of not getting back. When your estrogen is low, basically, you feel I'm not getting back. When your estrogen is high, you feel, oh, I have what I need. I'm happy, I'm fulfilled. So that increasing estrogen is directly linked to a woman's ability to feel safe and I have support. I don't have to do it all myself, which is the point of friendship. It's the point of marriage. It's the point of love. And estrogen is the love hormone. When you feel your estrogen goes up, you feel more love. When you feel your confidence goes up, that I can succeed, your testosterone goes up. So what I've organized is a series of communication styles and tools and techniques so that even when a woman is more on her male side and she's independent, she's making money, she's making testosterone more, a man can interact with her in such a way that he can raise her estrogen levels up to balance the testosterone. So we don't have to go back to the old-fashioned roles, but we have a new type of role, which is a man always has to be a provider. But what can he provide? He can provide a new kind of emotional support that can help women produce estrogen. And when women can produce estrogen, then they can continue to feel attraction towards the man in their life and love towards the man in their life or happiness in general. Because when a woman's not making enough female hormones at the right time of the month, her stress levels will be twice as high as a man's on average. And this was research that was done that women in the workplace, where they're making money in the workplace, on average, these are averages, there's always exceptions, but on average, a woman's stress levels are twice as high as a man's. And when she returns home, her stress levels will double again. Now, that's a tragedy today, but it can be remedied if women want the independence and the freedom that education gives them and birth control gives them. These are all our choices. So that's wonderful. If she wants to be on her male side, she needs to become aware of what she can do, say, and interact with others in a way that will raise her estrogen levels up so she can find that balance and lower her stress.
Interesting. So one doesn't have to essentially fall back into the stereotypical roles which existed many years back. So essentially, we are talking with the changing times. They can still rev up their individual hormones with different levels of communication and understanding their own needs.
You summarized it perfectly, Minu. It used to be culture defined these roles for men and defined roles for women that would produce those hormones. But I think we've outgrown the dependence on culture to do that. We can make our own individual choices and become more whole. I think that's what all evolution's about, is becoming self-aware, growing in wholeness, which is I, as a man, very clearly have a male side, and I very much have a female side. I'm a very loving grandfather. I'm a very generous, loving, caring person. I'm also very, very happy and fulfilled. Those qualities of happiness and fulfillment and love, that's all estrogen in your body. So my estrogen levels as a man are very high. It's just that I've maintained my testosterone levels to be even higher. The balance is there. Most men don't have that luxury. They don't have the knowledge that I'm teaching. For me, at 73 years old, my testosterone levels are 50% higher than when I was a young man. Whenever men don't have the high testosterone, their estrogen levels will start to rise as they get older, and that makes them more passive, makes them more grumpy, makes them more irritable. High estrogen in a man, low testosterone, causes men to feel anger. It's the foundation of all aggression. It's not that testosterone causes aggression, as so many people think. It's testosterone going low and estrogen going too high. It's called imbalance of our male and female side. When a man is not anchored in his masculinity of the hormones of his male side, then his female hormones will tend to rise up more and more, as shown by addiction. Anytime you're dependent on something outside yourself or someone outside yourself for happiness, your estrogen goes up. So, I'm dependent on you as a good interviewer for me. My estrogen goes up. I'm dependent on an audience to speak to. That's all estrogen producing. But also I'm very capable, I'm confident, I'm competent, and I'm selflessly serving. That's a big key thing for men, is to be of service. So many men are purposeless. They've lost their mission. They're depressed. They don't know why they're here. They lose meaning in life. They're wandering around depending on substances, addictions, sexual crazy activities, hedonistic activities in order some temporary glimpse of fulfillment. When what men aren't being taught is how you find fulfillment is first being of service to others and being rewarded for that, to the extent where you can take that reward and now provide something selflessly for a woman. To give to a woman is one of the greatest fulfillments in a man's life, but he has to learn how to give. Men don't know what women need today. That's the problem. Men say to me, When a man wants to get a divorce, he'll say to me, John, I still love her, but no matter what I do, it's never enough to make her happy. That's his issue. He just wants to succeed in making her happy, have a happy wife. He's a happy guy. Happy wife, happy life. That's the way men live. Women, they don't say that. They say, oh, I give and I give and I give. I got nothing left to give. I'm leaving this relationship. It's not like she cares that much about his happiness, although sometimes she does. Without a doubt, a depressed man will make a woman very unhappy. But what she's going to come to me and say, I do all these things for him and he's depressed and I get nothing back. So women need to get back because that's what produces estrogen. Men need to successfully give, and that's what produces testosterone. And there's nothing more powerful than a man succeeding, doing his best, and staying committed to his wife and to helping provide fulfillment for her. The data bears this out. The research shows that married people live longer and have less disease. I'll say that again. Married people live longer and have less disease. Single women have way more obesity. Single men have more heart disease. So what you'll see is that being married, and then people will say to me, well, John, that must be the happily married couples. I say, no, that's married couples. The data shows they're healthier, they live longer. And you think, why? Well, even if a relationship isn't that fulfilling, if a man stays committed, commitment is one of the most powerful testosterone stimulators there are. Just that I'm going to stay in there no matter what. And for a woman, feeling a man is committed to her, he's going to stay in there no matter what, that will keep her estrogen levels at a fairly healthy level. And that's why they have less sickness and disease and they live longer. This is all very biological. I'm not talking about my opinions about things, although it's all the way I interpret the biology and make sense of it. And this has never been done before because we didn't have this biological knowledge of how men and women are so very, very different when it goes to their biology. And their biology has a huge impact on how you feel, and how you feel has a huge impact on your biology. How you relate to other people has a huge impact on your biology, which determines how you feel, et cetera, et cetera. So if we want to have spiritual growth, wholeness, there comes a time, for me at least, as my enlightenment, and I was enlightened, I was declared enlightened by my teacher, Maharishi. I was going to be his successor, and then I left. I said, I've done this. I found myself. Now what do you do once you find yourself is you contribute to the world. And my way of contributing to the world was evidently my destiny is to be a teacher of relationship and understand. Probably, I would say one of the greatest problems in the world today is the lack of love between mothers and fathers that gives rise to more and more dysfunctional children. You can see the dysfunction in relationships more and more. Again, look at the data. Twice as many people are dissatisfied in relationships, so they don't even get married. There's this huge, and divorce rates are always high. Well, what we see is as the lack of success in relationships is ascending, what also has been ascending in America, where I have the statistics, is divorce. And what we see right now in America, shocking, is between 50 and 60% of all children grow up without a father in the home. Now, if you don't have a father in the home who's helping mom be happy, and a mother who loves dad, who depends on dad for certain meaningful things, if a child doesn't see that, a little girl has no idea of the potential she can get out of a man. She has no idea. And she certainly doesn't know how men are different. And she misinterprets things all the time. And a little boy doesn't know how to be a man if he doesn't have a father. So you'll see that most of the criminals in jail did not have fathers. All of the shooters in America, we see these terrible things, shooters, they all did not have fathers. Okay, not that one can't survive without a father. There are cases. In my own case, well, I had a dad who stayed there with my mom. He traveled a lot. So what my mom did is she made sure that I had mentors my whole childhood. I had a karate teacher. I was in the front of karate magazines, a karate kid. I had my own entrepreneur. I had worked in a hamburger stand. My mother encouraged me to be an entrepreneur. I had a paper route, the biggest paper route in Houston, Texas. You throw the papers every day, and she was very helpful to me to do that. She wanted me to be around working class men and learn from them. So that would help my masculinity. She realized he needs a father figure, and his dad hasn't been around that much. So it wasn't like he was dysfunctional. He's just busy dad doing the best he could to save the family, traveling and working hard.
I agree with you, particularly about the fact that if at home you don't have an example to follow, where else are you going to learn? Because your learning begins at home, essentially. And very important question. We talked about, I get the logic, I get the biology between the hormones and the balances and so on. What happens when the reference point for these hormones, instead of being outward, turns inward, what you were doing earlier in meditation, where to raise the levels of testosterone and estrogen, on the other hand, for women, for example, is the other way. The reference point is not the outside or another person, but the inside.
So in this book, a big book I wrote on hormones called Beyond Mars and Venus. And in that book, chapters and chapters are dedicated to what women can do without depending on a man. She's a single woman. She don't want to be with a man. How she can keep her hormones in balance without the intimacy with a man. Although without a doubt, we know having intimacy with a man is going to produce the best outcome of longevity and health. Let's just keep that in mind. My bias, of course, is I want everybody to get married, have children, and create more population of happy, fulfilled people. Right now, population's going down. As much as people used to think, oh, we're overpopulated, which maybe we are. Population is going down really, really fast. And that's danger. A very, very dangerous place for our society. So I see I'm helping to solve one of the greatest problems is that we don't want to become extinct. You know, as women's estrogen levels get lower and lower, which they're happening, what happens is their fertility goes down. So women's fertility and male fertility are dramatically dropping. 30% of couples cannot have children without some kind of assistance, and some even without assistance, they can't. This is shocking information. I wouldn't say it's only the dynamics of the failure in our relationships, irregularity in our hormones, but also we have the toxicity from the environment, the plastics, the GMOs, that also are called endocrine disruptors. But once those endocrine disruptors, what are they doing? They're throwing your hormones out of balance. And what's amazing is if you have good relationships with yourself, then there's ways that a man can raise his testosterone to a great extent without a woman, without being in an intimate relationship, ways for women without having a man and be in an intimate relationship to raise her estrogen. But the good news is that when a woman is able to raise her estrogen to healthy levels, if she's still at a young age, she will start to feel the desire to be in a relationship with a man. This has been proven that as women's estrogen levels go to a very high level, their desire for a sexual connection with a man dramatically increases. Now, certainly there's forces against that. Let's say your father was abusive. I can understand why you never want to be with a man. So when those desires come up to be with a man because you can't, you go into a state of denial, which also then pushes your estrogen back down. Not that healthy. These people need therapy. But the bottom line is there's great news here. You don't have to be in a relationship today. You can find the balance. For me as a monk, it requires discipline. Okay, so I'm practicing non-self-gratification. Okay, so this is particularly sexual self-gratification. Never did I do that for 9 years, which was fantastic for building testosterone. It's one of the greatest disciplines there is. In India, that's very well known. The brahmachari stage is you don't have sex, you don't release the sexual energy as a male, your brain grows, you become smarter, you become stronger, you become healthier, and biologically, your testosterone goes up. Today, with all the porn, that's one of the major causes of decreasing testosterone in our younger generation. Average 20-year-old man has 20% less testosterone on average than 20 years ago. And one of the major things that's changed is this huge amount of porn that's going on, this addiction. Because with porn, there's a decrease of testosterone, and it's already proven. And also, even in a relationship, too much sex can lower your testosterone. Not enough sex can lower your testosterone. So I have the data which shows biologically, if you want your testosterone to keep growing, how much sex you should have. So it's not up to me to tell couples when to have sex, who to have sex. All I can tell you is the data, and I explain that in my book. Too much doesn't work. Not enough doesn't work. How you have sex makes a huge difference. If a man doesn't tend to a woman's needs in sex, it makes her more vulnerable to sickness than the women whose needs are fulfilled. If neither are having sex, then they're going to have relationship challenges much more than couples that have a successful, fruitful, physical, intimate relationship. You know, and there I'm just talking about, actually I should find the research on that. I don't have it at the top of my head, but I know my own experience of 50 years helping couples restore their sexual life. So many couples stop having sex, or one partner is not fulfilled, the other one is somewhat fulfilled. But when one loses, both lose. Sex is a total win-win situation. If she's not getting what she needs, he's not getting what he needs. And if it's got to be win-win. That's the whole point of it. You grow in intimacy. And when you have a healthy sexual relationship, problems never get big. They're small. It's literally like we have these love tanks that fill up. For a man, a fulfilling sexual relationship fills his love tank up. For a woman, the sex doesn't fulfill the love tank fully. What the sex does is, in order for a woman to want to have sex, to enjoy sex, he has to do certain things to fill up her love tank or her love bank so she's full. That's the whole dynamic of men and women. A man can have sex like that. A woman, at least when he's younger, and his testosterone is there. A woman has requirements in order for her to experience the peaks of fulfillment. There are lower levels of fulfillment that women can achieve, just like for a man, lower levels of fulfillment by using robots. That's where we're going, because you can get an addiction experience of pleasure using a robot, vibrators, toys, all these other things, as opposed to love, intimacy. Enlightened sexuality is about even transcending the need for sex, but actually using the feelings of sexuality to feel the love in your heart and express that love. And then more pleasure, because when you feel pleasure, you can feel more. And when you can feel more, you direct those feelings to your partner as expressions of love. There's a whole elaborate system I've developed which allows men to last longer, for women to be multi-orgasmic, for women to be fulfilled. And this is all just with knowledge. Right now, I know in America, half women have never experienced orgasm. The other quarter can only experience what we call a climax, which is just stimulation of the clitoris. That's all. Not the whole vaginal orgasmic experience that's potential for a woman. But that all has to happen only when her estrogen levels have risen so high. So what I've created in my book, Beyond Mars and Venus, is a series of biohacks, so that every day I'm raising my wife's estrogen levels up to almost levels of ovulation. She's not going to be ovulating, but her estrogen levels will be at that level for her to be orgasmic. And then suddenly her sex desire for a lifetime is the same as his, or even more. This is the potential. If you can have it, why not go for it? And what's missing is the knowledge. And then you've got only 25% of women have ever even experienced vaginal climax. Some think it's not possible. Well, it's not possible if your estrogen levels are not being stimulated in the right way with the right amount of support.
No, I get it. And I'm actually, as far as data, I'm sure you've done enough of data analysis, etc. I'm with you on the logic, definitely. The question which arises then, I'm with you on the biology and the hormones, totally with you there. But then a question may arise that in different parts of the world, depending upon the cultures, value systems, etc., the habits of people, men and women could have different orientations in terms of also expectations and ways of being, also again dependent on the cultures they were brought up in. Again, value systems have a big role to play. For example, even something as small as interdependence. In the eastern part of the globe, even though it was said stereotypically, but which is still true, is interdependence plays a greater role, whereas in the western part of the hemisphere, we are talking of independence. And particularly in Europe, for example, independence is literally rubbed in, especially in Western Europe, both in men and women. So this is just a very small, I've just picked up one needle of the entire mass of cultures and diversity that we all belong to on this earth. Having said that, where does all this bring us? Does that apply in your opinion? Because I do understand to a huge extent, I'm with you on the logic in biology. I get it. But would that apply to that many parts of the globe where the differences are and the diversity extends so deep?
I ended up traveling to 20 different countries. That's all I've been to, and taught these ideas. And this book has been a bestseller all around the globe. And in the 20 countries I've been to, I'll speak and I'll give examples of my own marriage, the only misunderstandings. And the particular ones that I talk about tend to be quite universal. People will be thinking, like in China, I'll be talking, and it's amazing. He has the same challenges with his wife that I have, and the woman will have the same challenges with her husband that my wife has. They'll relate to so many of the stories I have. At the same time, the culture, there are differences in cultures without a doubt. And maybe part of the genius of Men Are From Mars is I keep it simple. women need to talk more. And men don't understand. Sometimes a woman just needs to talk. And if men talk too much, women turn off sexually to men. Men need to listen more and then they can talk. Don't even bother sharing what's inside of you unless a woman doesn't feel safe sharing inside of her. And I give all these examples, and people go, you're talking about the European culture of everybody being more independent. So as women have become more independent, separate from children, separate from their husbands, separate from their family, they have become like men. That's true. So I say women need to talk about their thoughts and their feelings. And many women will go, no, I don't need to do that. I don't have time to do that. I'm busy doing these things. And I call that role reversal because in my experience, I teach these women how to talk about what's going on inside of them and promise them, if you do this, and you explain to the husband how to listen, because men don't know how to listen, when men actually hears her in the way she needs to be heard, and she can share in the way that I'm suggesting she needs to share, her stress levels will go down. So it used to be back in the 90s in America, I could say, oh, women, when they come home, men don't listen. Now, women aren't saying that. Women are saying my husband talks too much when he comes home because he's now on his female side. When you talk about feelings, you make estrogen. If a man can't connect with, and you also feel connection through estrogen. If a woman's on her male side, there's an unconscious tendency in men in order to connect with their wives, because we love our wives, we want to connect with them. If she's on her male side, our tendency is to go to our female side to connect with her and start talking and sharing feelings. And she's like, I'm too busy to listen to that. I don't want to listen to that. Because if she was, she would go even further to her male side. So paradoxically, when you're listening to somebody share their inner world, you're on your male side as an observer, and they're on their female side as revealing. So the observer is penetrating into her, which is the male energy. So that's called role reversal. And so what I have to do is explain. So many people are unhappy. If they're unhappy, I immediately go right to, what are you doing to feel good in this relationship? And they're not feeling good. They have resentments and there's anger and there's frustration, or they're polite with each other, but there's no passion and attraction. What I do is point out the ways they're in role reversal and how to come back to men being more masculine and women being more feminine. Now, lots of women have very masculine husbands because he's very independent and she's very independent, and she doesn't know how to be vulnerable and open up and be dependent upon his kindness, his empathy, his support. I'm not saying be dependent on man for your money and for everything. I'm saying that when you come to me as a therapist, you're depending on me to treat you with respect and honor what's going on inside of you and not poke holes into it, that you feel safe. So safety is you're depending on someone to be there for you. Well, you can't be safe with a man these days who hasn't been taught how to listen to a woman share her feelings. Because when you share feelings as a listener, you shouldn't say things like, don't worry about that, or what's the big deal, or just forget it, or it's not really a big deal, no problem, or that's kind of silly, you're being like a child. Oh, I'll handle that for you. I'll do that. You don't have to worry about it. These are all dismissive statements that a man doesn't realize he's being dismissive. You know, if I'm with a friend, he's talking about problems, unless they're very deep problems, I'll laugh it off and say, don't worry about it. Let's go to the bar and have a beer. You know, let's have fun. This is fine to do. But when you have a wife who needs to go to her female side, we men have to learn how to respect that aspect of her, how to honor her with non-judgmental understanding and empathy and caring. These are the things that keep the love alive in a relationship. It's polarity. Now, the polarity means it's like magnetic poles, positive pole, negative pole. And when they get close, they click. That click is sexual attraction between a man and a woman. In the beginning of a relationship, there is more sexual attraction because the newness of the relationship stimulates high levels of the brain chemical dopamine. That dopamine, which is stimulated by newness, raises a man's testosterone up, the male hormones, and raises a woman's estrogen up, the female hormone. So now he is in her presence more masculine, she is more feminine, and that means there's more attraction. Now, once you're married, or once you've been in a relationship for a while, it could just be 3 months in some cases, 3 years, whatever. The honeymoon period is over. What happens is that polarity goes away because you don't have the newness that stimulates the dopamine in the brain. What you get is more serotonin, which is more comfortable, more at ease. You understand each other. There's nothing new and dangerous or exciting. So the testosterone doesn't automatically go up in the man, doesn't automatically go up in a woman, and you lose the polarity. Particularly if she's already on her male side, there's going to be no polarity. So how to solve this problem is to realize you can communicate and behave in certain ways that increases masculine energy in him, increases feminine energy in her. In simple terms, that's just foreplay in the bedroom. But I'm talking about foreplay outside the bedroom every day if you want to get her estrogen levels up high. Now that creates this polarity. Now it's not as simple as that, because another thing most people don't know is the secret of longevity, the secret of health and happiness, all centers around a particular hormone that's now just being discovered and understood. It's called prolactin. When a man has prolactin, he only can produce prolactin by having sex with a woman he's committed to and love with. If a man has sex with a stranger or with himself or with a robot or with on a screen of his TV, whatever it is, whenever a man has sex in those situations, he does not make prolactin. He makes prolactin only when he makes love to someone he's committed to, who he loves and she loves him. We know that because married couples who are committed make prolactin. Now, what prolactin does is it inhibits dopamine from going too high, which inhibits his ability to be interested in sex. So this is why so many men lose interest in sex over many years, because the prolactin levels increase. It also frees a man from all addictive tendencies. Men are basically addicted to the high of sex. Prolactin is an antidote to that. It's the monogamy hormone, because now suddenly he's not addicted to other people for sex. He can be just attracted to his wife. But the physical attraction will go away with prolactin, except if he's making naturally more testosterone and she's making more estrogen, then they will have the passion and have the benefits of prolactin, which is the monogamy hormone. I have a lot of prolactin in my body. I can tell you what it feels like. It feels like I could care less about ever having sex with another woman. I just want to have sex with my partner. I can't even be turned on by other women. I'm considered disgusted by pornography. Occasionally in a movie, a couple starts to have sex, I kind of go, no, I don't want to have sex with that person. It's such a different reaction. But this is called maturity for a man. He has prolactin in his body. It frees him from all addictive tendencies like complaining, addictive tendencies like anger, addictive tendencies like substances, addiction to bad behaviors, bad habits. All of those addictions start to go away with choices he can make. Of course, you have to make the choices. Don't be a fool here. But you need the hormone that gives you that support so you have control over yourself. And that's what prolactin can do. And that's another one of the great benefits of commitment and monogamy and marriage, because only married couples make it.
I've got the logic. No, I'm with you on the biology and the logic. Again, the question now comes that because of intense global mobility nowadays, a lot of people are moving to different parts of the globe. That's one. What is also happening is a lot of intercultural marriages are happening. One person from this end of the world, another person from another end of the world, and they are now living in probably in one part of the world where one person came from, or in a third place, for example. Now, in that scenario, biology all taken account, yes, I understand also what you mentioned about a lot of examples you mentioned in different countries where the expectations were similar. But still, when one person is coming from the east and another person from the west, their expectations of each other might override the hormonal factor, the intellect.
Yes. Expectations have a huge effect of what hormones you're going to make. Okay. A Russian woman, for example, basically 70 million men were killed in the last century due to communism. So when all the men die off, what does that mean? You've got single women raising children all by themselves. Any woman who raises a child by herself has to be way on her male side, always out of balance with her female side, which is why you see it's so hard on these single women who are doing it themselves. They're so stressed out. Again, the research bears it out. Their stress levels are twice as high in the workplace and twice as high and then double when they get home. So this is universal. So when I'm in Russia, basically, what you'll see characteristically is there's a greater tendency there than in other European countries to not depend on men. Is to feel you really can't depend on a man. You have to do it yourself. Now, my wife, Bonnie, of 34 years, was Jewish. They have different expectations, but still the biology is the same. You work with those things and you realize that, if I'm not going to go into those cultural things to get in a little trouble talking about those differences. My present wife now is Chinese. I won't get into trouble with that one. They came from a communist country where Mao destroyed 50 million people. They killed all the rich people, all of the smart people. You're left with all of the people who really don't know how to run a country. And then suddenly capitalism comes in and the country soars in terms of huge amounts of money. So some people got rich very quickly. A lot of discontent there, where the women are quite capable of making just as much money or more than men. So those women, for example, not interested in marriage at all. They come and they say, what do I need a man for? What do I need a man for? Their culture says you can make money. Money is everything when you're poor. And now suddenly you can make money on your own. What do you need money for? So there's a cultural difference right now. So I go and explain to them, you're not happy, are you? You're stressed out, aren't you? That's because you don't have a man in your life that you can depend on for emotional support. And some women will still say, I don't need a man. I'm not going to bother with that. Why not? Because you don't know the benefit a man can give you. I teach you the benefit and how you can get that benefit from a man. So I have to take into consideration my partner is from another culture. There's differences that show up, but the solution is always the same. Come back to ways to communicate in a way for a person to bypass cultural expectations and telling you what you should do, what you don't do. Come back to your natural knowledge of how you feel when you're not stressed, when your heart is open, when someone is caring for you and doing things for you. My wife was taught by her father, never trust a man, never trust a man. So she wants to be super independent. So I support her in being super independent, which would make her stressed out of her mind. Except I also say, and while you're doing that, let me provide this kind of support for you so you can enjoy your success as she's becoming more financially successful. That's great with me. But we prioritize what our biology needs in order for us to remain in love. And never historically have we had anybody in love. Let me just put that out there. We come from a corrupt society, murder, death, cheating, lies, deception. Every government is corrupt. There's no question about it. Lies everywhere. People say, oh, this is what they did in the Greek days. Yes, and they were all hedonists and they destroyed their culture. Go to any culture, you see they destroyed themselves with wars and violence and heartless behaviors. We're talking about creating a world of love where a man and a woman can honor each other in something which is to a great extent new, a monogamous relationship. Because I point out, monogamy is the ultimate. That's where you will have the healthiest. That's where you will be biologically the healthiest. That's where you can experience lasting passion. Other cultures, because they didn't have this consciousness that where we can balance our masculine and feminine and knowledge of how to do it. It was natural for a man, he'd marry his wife and she was, had sexual desire when she was younger. And then he would have affairs if he could support with his wife. He'd have a mistress. He'd have other wives. That was not a problem. Women were not bothered by that because they lost their sex drive. And they realized he still has his sex drive. I love him. Let him do what he wants to do. Well, you see, that diminishes the potential of a man to experience his full male and female sides. This is what I'm teaching is a whole nother level of to be in a monogamous relationship, which feeds my ability to stay completely whole as masculine and feminine. By connecting with my wife and honoring her femininity, serving her and her happiness, I am grounded in my female side, but the male side is doing the job. So I get to experience this holistic brain, which I started developing when I was a young meditator, and they measured my brain. It's the balancing the left and the right hemispheres of the brain through relationship. Meditation can do it while you're sitting quietly. Yeah, sure. But you got to go out in the world, make money, help people, have children, make the world a better place. Come on out and do it. From my friends who are still monks, they're all happy in their monk state. I say, try having a mortgage and raising kids and see if you can hold on to that happiness. They can't. Unless you're a guru and you have all these people giving you money and worshiping you. No, be an ordinary person and make a difference in the world. That's real spirituality. That's what I'm about in my life. And I still, of course, meditate an hour to 2 hours a day. a big part of my life. I do my yoga exercises. I'm vital in my body. But, making love is a huge part of my life, being someone in service to society. It's very similar to the Eightfold Path of Buddha and that one. It's all spirituality wants to find love and balance. Love is the highest message, but we've got to also earn money along the way. We've got to raise children. We've got to be responsible to the planet. That's what I teach.
No, I'm with you all the way there, John, because I also believe we're all spiritual beings having a human existence, which means we are so lucky to have a body to experience, to breathe, to touch, and to feel. And ultimate is to override that. And as a mentor told me many, many years ago, probably 25, 30 years ago, remaining equanimous in this world with all that is happening around requires more of yourself than you would need when you were sitting alone on a mountaintop.
Yes, yes. Yeah. And for me, I wasn't sitting alone on a mountaintop. I was in a nice hotel room, but still, I had a more comfortable lifestyle than the yogis of air. But, when I was in India, I would get up, I stopped doing what I'm about to say, but in my hotel rooms where I was in Europe and I was with the Maharishi, we'd rent out these big resorts and everything. But when I would go to India, in Rishikesh, I got up 4:00 in the morning, go out to bathe in the freezing cold water of the Ganges and meditate. And there I am doing it. And after the sun rose and it started heating up, then the yogis came out. I realized it doesn't have to be that severe. But, discipline was very important to me. Every morning as a yogi, a monk, I would take an ice cold bath in the winter. It was very cold. I do my ice cold bathing. I don't do that now. I do take a cold shower, but I'm not like these younger people. The body changes. There's no question about it, but my consciousness has only grown and my ability to feel love is off the chart. Now, I have to say that the spiritual practices, there's devotion to God is an amazing thing. That's a thing which we're losing today, which is devotion to God. Particularly for women, devotion to God is so, so important because you feel you're not alone. Anytime you feel you're not alone, you're making estrogen. And having the idea of karma is a very powerful thing, a spiritual concept that what you give out will come back to you. So for me, it's always been a guiding thing. I try to do my very, very best to treat others the way I want to be treated. And therefore, I ensure that I will be treated in a good way in my life. That empowers my masculinity to do fairness, to do noble, to be virtuous, to be selfless. And, this is part of the spiritual path is we're here to serve. And that's particularly the male side. That's not hard for women to do. For women, their big lesson is not to serve. They automatically do that. A woman's lesson is learn how to receive support so I don't feel empty and I can freely overflow in my serving. See, women got the genes to give, give, give. That's why every depressed woman is saying things like, I give and I don't get back. I'm all alone, whatever. I've given so much. I'm burnt out because she hasn't learned the art of how to receive. But one of the gifts, as I talk about in my book, that produces estrogen is belief in God and devotion to God and dancing for God and dancing, singing the songs. All those things are very, very estrogen stimulating. And not that a man can't benefit from estrogen stimulation. It's just the man has to make sure he stays more on his male side. He has to anchor into that. And that's always the discipline of spirituality, of fasting, of enduring suffering without complaint, discipline and serving. Let all your actions be there to be productive as much as possible. And that's been my life. And I paid off. It's just that created a wonderful benefit for me and for making this world a better place with over, 100 million people bought my books all around in 45 different languages. And not that everybody in that culture loves my books or whatever, but a lot do.
I read quite a bit about some differences of opinion, which is also healthy to have difference of opinion and different data. So everybody is on their own road, so to say. A very good example, you mentioned that your current partner is from China. So that serves for me as a very good example. Can you share an example where you said, okay, it was a bit different expectation from your side or from your partners? Just
Sure.
an example.
Okay, and that expectation is her expectation, and being from China, is women in China never talk about their feelings. Now, that came about because men didn't know how to listen to their feelings. So then I had to teach her And actually, the way I met her, she had already read Men Are From Mars. She teaches those ideas in China. There's a whole Men Are From Mars college in China. I speak at, this is a big deal in China more than anywhere else in the world, because they clearly know that men and women are different. But now that we know we're different, how can we understand those differences in a positive way? And so, but even still from her culture, she basically don't depend on a guy. It's hard for her. And two is, so when she would become upset, she goes, okay, then I'll go back to China. I said, oh, well, let's talk about that. And I get her to talk more, and then the stress goes down. You see, feelings are always transitory. They're like waves. That's another idea, is that when you have more estrogen in your body, your tendency is to go up and down, up and down. You just don't want it to be tidal waves. You see, this is talking is a way of reconnecting, particularly for the female side of us. Now, if a man feels like he needs to talk to get better, usually he needs to listen more. And there are times, when he needs to talk. There's no doubt about that. He's talked to a therapist or a friend, not bare his soul to his partner, unless he's loving his partner, and his partner is able to hear what he has to say. So there's subtleties with all of this. But an example for her is, whenever she was upset about something, she would just not talk. And that's what they're taught to do. Women are taught not to express what they feel. And that's also in the Hindu culture. Women don't reveal what's inside. And one of the logical reasons for that is that men at those times were not capable historically of hearing a woman's discontent, because so many men, they're happy when a woman is happy. And if a woman is unhappy, they often take it personally. Why teach men how not to take it personally? And to feel your power, that you can take a woman who's upset and bring her back to the most loving person she can be, without telling her what she should think, what she should feel, but more asking right questions. So that's a dynamic of her not wanting to share, and teaching her it's safe. And she'll say that I've never shared my feelings with a man. But with John, I share everything, because she can. And she didn't even know it would make her feel so good. She didn't know that it was integral to becoming a multi-orgasmic woman. If you can't share anything about you, you can't open up to the heights of orgasmic pleasure that's possible. And that's one of the things that, again, married couples get to enjoy. Other women will never enjoy that.
Yeah, interesting. Because I think there was some time back, there was a relationship counselor in Europe, not even one, but several of them had mentioned that European men, again, I don't know stereotypes or not, I'm just quoting what they mentioned, are not in touch with their feelings.
Well, okay. I would say that, ironically, it's women who are more not in touch with their feelings when they come into my office. They can complain a lot. They have a lot to say, but actually to feel their feelings of shame, to share their feeling insecurities and their fears and their sadness and their disappointments, it's a big bundle in there. And usually they don't know how to share that. So I'm an expert at helping women to do it. They never had the safety to do it. And men, I don't think, need to do it as much. What men have to learn to do more is be present for a woman and help her to connect with her feelings. Because you see, when I'm present with my wife and I'm connecting with her feelings, I'm relating to those feelings. I'm getting in touch with my own feelings through her, but I'm able to stay masculine. If I just go to you and share my feelings, I'm feminine. But if I listen to you share your feelings with all my love, and I'm present, and I'm able to bring you to the depths of insecurity, the parts of you that feels, do you love me? Am I important to you? Am I beautiful? Are you still happy with me? Are you angry with me? Are you disappointed? These are all these insecurities that women have. And if they say, oh, I don't have those, I go, okay, you just don't know they're there. Spend an hour with me. You'll discover what's inside there. This is what all therapy is about, is helping us come back to deal with the traumas of our childhood that live within us. They will eventually always come up in an intimate relationship. When you have love, all the traumas of the past slowly come up into your awareness, and your brain doesn't know, why do I feel this way, and blames your partner, rather than realizing it's things from your past coming up. And that's the therapy side of a relationship. Can be the best therapy for you to heal your past if you know how to deal with it. That 90% of anything you're upset about your partner is your past. It's only, we're just overreacting all the time. But without that expanded knowledge, people are rigid in their righteousness of, oh, I'm hurt, you did this, and I'm going to stay hurt forever. This is all nonsense. We have to learn forgiveness. We have to learn responsibility. We have to learn that 90% of whatever we're feeling, if it's negative, has something to do with when we're a child growing up that we don't even remember and don't even know about. There's so much more for us to learn and develop as we grow through love and through relationships to express our creative potential, which is possible for everybody to a great extent, but they need the knowledge of how to do it. regardless of what culture they are, they still have a biology and a connection to God. And by honoring the biology, we can more easily connect to the divine, which is within all of us.
Thank you for listening to the series Between the East and the West. Do subscribe to the channels mentioned on the site in case, of course, you liked what you heard. I am Meenu Gupta, the host of the series, and I'll be looking forward to your comments. We love feedback. Thank you once again. Namaste and bye-bye.